Logged In and Stressed Out. It's a book by Paula Durlofsky. And okay, yeah, this is the second time I've started this, mainly because, whoops, mainly because I put a copyrighted video in it before, and CNN won't let me show the video. Uh, anyway, this is the book right here. This is what it looks like. I've got a copy of it sitting right there. It's a pretty good book. Logged In and Stressed Out: How Social Media is Affecting Your Mental Health and What You Can Do About It. It's a book out of Rowan and Littlefield. Passively consuming social media and other forms of technology, even when we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, can result in feeling way more sad, anxious, grumpy, annoyed, and irritable than we did moments before we logged in. And one of the things that I did over break was probably look at Facebook a little bit more than I should have. Um, it did make me a little grouchy, and one of the reasons, and annoyed, mainly because I have old friends that are far more conservative than I am, and they were sending attack ads against Joe Biden, which I thought were kind of silly. I mean, you can attack his ideas, but it was just nonsense. There was a lot of nonsense in it, and I was spending way too much time on Facebook and not getting this done. And that's why today, St. Patrick's Day, I'm recording this instead of last week when I should have. Humans evolved into social beings out of necessity. If we wander around alone, probably we do not survive. Some predator would pick us off, probably some large cat or a pack of dogs or whatever. Dependence on and cooperation with each other enhanced our ability to survive the harsh environmental circumstances we faced centuries ago, eons ago. Although certain threats to our survival have lessened in today's world, humans still have an innate need and drive to affiliate with one another, and that's what keeps us safe. That's why we call ourselves, you call yourselves Dene, we all call ourselves Americans. You may call yourself a New Mexican or an Arizonan, or perhaps Utahian, Utahn. I don't know. In fact, the lack of such connections in one's life can produce problematic feelings of loneliness. And of course, none of us want to be lonely. The invention of apps, social media, and various dating platforms has significantly altered the ways in which people socialize, meet, date, and develop their relationships that later turn into long-term committed ones. Single adults increasingly complain about the difficulty of forging a relationship in the digital age. And of course, she wrote this book. I don't know when she wrote this book. Wait a second. Let me take a quick look. She wrote this book. I think it was before COVID, 2020. So it was before COVID actually. But since COVID, all bets are off. All the rules that we had, everything that we were thinking before COVID, all that's gone out the window because all the things that we noticed before, because of the isolation of the lockdowns, everything has changed. All bets are off. So the knowledge, this absolute knowledge we had before, it's gone out the window because people have changed. People changed because they had to spend a year in lockdown, or they had to spend 18 months not going to bars or whatever. And especially the people that are in their teens, were in their teens and 20s at that time. Now they feel like they've lost a couple of years. So we'll have to keep our eyes open, and that's your job. I'm too old to worry about this kind of stuff because I'm going to be out of the game one of these days. One of these days, maybe sooner rather than later. And it's good to it's good to understand that things change. World War II changed things. World War I changed things. history changes things, and of course, COVID certainly changed things. That is the video, and you need to watch it. It's really kind of fascinating because it talks about virtual uh, girlfriends ruining the next generation of men. Men are not going to want to get married because they can go online and this lady will talk to them like they're some kind of a king or something, and she'll send them pictures of her naked and whatnot. And of course, she's just an avatar. She's not a real person. And they're afraid that men are not going to want to get married and have children anymore. And this kind of thing is happening in Korea. This kind of thing's happening in some of the Western European nations. Italy has had zero population growth since the 50s. It's very possible that this could stop mass reproduction, or it could slow things down and really change things. Nothing else in life can really compare to the power and the meaning our relationships have over our experience of life. Most things in life outside of our relationships can't fill us up or gratify us as much as can the people with whom we share our lives. So sharing our lives is important to us. We learn how to have emotionally intimate relationships with our early relationships, from our early relationships, most notably our relationship with our early caregivers and our family of origin. These early relationships carry great importance because they set the tone and foundation for all our future ones, including our digital relationships. Stonewalling is cutting off all communication by giving someone the silent treatment until they do what you want them to do. Refusing to see the other person's perspective by minimization or disengagement is another form of stonewalling. And so there you go. It's giving somebody the silent treatment. Emotional withholding, when a person withholds love and affection in order to communicate anger, they're being emotionally withholding, which creates a great deal of anxiety in the victim as it plays into our human fears of rejection, abandonment, and unworthiness of love. Twisting, when the victim confronts the abuser deflects attention from themselves by twisting facts around in order to place blame or responsibility onto the victim. They then demand an apology to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. Bouts of intense rage and fury without obvious or rational cause can create a great amount of fear and uncertainty in the victim. Intense rage episodes are shocking and startling for everyone. The aim of twisting is to force the victim into silence and compliance. And of course, that is Chubby Checker doing the twist. Now, I don't think he invented the twist, but he was one of the great aficionados of the twist. Trivializing accomplishments, emotional abusers need to feel dominant and superior in order to cope with their deep-seated feelings of inferiority, shame, and envy. Tactics of trivializing others, accomplishments including mockery, belittling goals, ignoring accomplishments, and finding ways to sabotage another from achieving their own accomplishments, and that's known as trivializing. Our digital experiences, interactions, and relationships can cultivate a unique feeling of what psychologists refer to as social presence. Social presence is a feeling, one that is not always accurate or genuine, of emotional closeness and intimacy with another individual from afar. And isn't it nice that I have McAfee? Whoops. The digital age allows us to live an edited life. We can choose when to view and reply to messages at our convenience or simply whenever we feel like it. Feeling emotionally attuned and emotionally intimate to a person through texting doesn't mean our experience is real. One client created a whole new dilemma through a virtual affair which forced her to lead a fake life, in that her intense feelings toward her virtual lover were to a degree a creation of her own projections and internal fantasies. The solution was for her to take a break from social media and technology altogether because she had created in her own mind she had projected her feelings and internal fantasies on this other individual as if they had the same feelings that she did. Of course, since it was online, none of it was real, so she had to leave social media. One study found that on average, Americans check their phones 50 times a day, every half hour or so. And I don't know about you, but my phone's in the other room and I hardly ever look at it. But I am 75 years old and I grew up with telephones stuck to the wall. So for somebody who has always had a phone in their hand, it might be difficult for you not to look at your phone. Another study found that Americans check their iPhones once every 12 minutes. Recent studies have examined the relationship between attachment styles, the characteristic ways in which we learn to relate to others from our earliest relationships, and our social media habits. Secure attachment, caregivers are consistently available, emotionally attuned, empathetic and responsive to their charges' needs. People with secure attachment styles tend to exhibit confidence, healthy self-esteem, and an ability to regulate emotions and are more likely to have and enjoy healthy reciprocal relationships. My phone just made a sound. I don't care. Secure. Okay, secure attachments. Hopefully you have a secure attachment to everyone in your life. Anxious attachment, when caregivers are inconsistent with their ability to be responsive, empathic, and emotionally attuned to their charges, may develop anxious attachment. As adults, anxiously attached individuals tend to doubt their self-worth, show higher degrees of ambivalence, fear rejection, seek reassurance and approval, and long for constant closeness. They are anxiously attached, emotionally distressed. The urge to connect with others is heightened, and efforts made to connect often bring about negative emotional consequences. That's anxious attachment. Avoidant attachment is characterized by a caregiver's general lack of availability and responsiveness. As adults, avoidantly attached individuals can be excessively self-reliant and mistrustful and might avoid intimacy. People in this group tend to use attachment deactivating strategies, never showing an outward desire for closeness or affection in most of their relationships. In 2005, only 5% of Americans used at least one social media platform. That was in 2005. That's 20 years ago. Today, over 75% of Americans have at least one social media account, and my only one is Facebook. And I was off Facebook for like 4 or 5 years. I just got back on it. I can't remember why. I was looking for somebody, I think. Oh well. Many people turned to their virtual friends and followers on social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and LinkedIn as a way to fulfill their attachment needs. Actually, I'm on LinkedIn too, but I think I got on LinkedIn so that one of my students was filling something out, and they needed a recommendation, but the recommendation had to be on LinkedIn. So I figured, what the heck? I actually thought, what the hell? So I went on LinkedIn. I'm not looking for another job. This is my last job, by the way. Don't worry about me going someplace else. The only someplace else I'm going to go is retirement. So those with anxious attachment misuse social media, using it as a means for meeting their attachment needs. Anxiously attached social media users often overshare to fulfill the need for belonging and reassurance. They are also overly concerned with their online impressions, spending an excessive amount of time crafting comments and photoshopping uploaded pictures to their social networking sites to fulfill their need for validation. And you can see what this guy's done to himself. He made his head skinnier. He took all the white out of his hair. Yeah, he made himself look a lot younger. Another consequence related to anxiously attached social media users is a reported increase in anxiety after being online. The use of social network sites can trigger a cycle of anxiety for anxiously attached individuals by simultaneously acting as a trigger for relationship anxiety and a coping tool for anxiety reduction when emotionally distressed. This cycle is because insecurely attached people are preoccupied with how others perceive them. They look to others for reassurance and emotional support and are more likely to struggle with low self-esteem. A significant goal of treatment is to learn how to develop secure relationships. The therapist should work hard to establish a therapeutic relationship that allows the client to feel secure enough to open up and take emotional risks in sessions. The client should also examine both their present and past relationships in which they felt somewhat secure. Healthy relationships are a product of the relationship that an individual has with themselves. Cultivating self-love is a good place to start therapy. Self-love is a natural byproduct of secure attachment. Having self-love is not being narcissistic or selfish. It means having positive regard for your own well-being and happiness. People practicing self-love are less critical and harsh with themselves when they make mistakes. They're able to celebrate their positive qualities and accept their negative ones. They're more likely to have fulfilling and healthy relationships. For people to develop into healthy adults with ambitions, goals, and self-esteem, as young children, they need to receive a certain degree of positive attention from their parents or alloparents. Alloparents are other parents, like your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, anybody else that acts in a parental role. One crucial way in which parents give their children positive attention is by mirroring. Parents mirror their children when they validate them, confirm them, and take great pleasure in their unique sense of self and achievements. Mirroring is an essential building block for developing secure attachments, healthy self-esteem, a healthy degree of confidence, emotional stability, and a cohesive identity. The absence of mirroring and validation in our early years, characteristic of anxiously and avoidantly attached childhoods, inhibits the cultivation of healthy self-esteem and the development of a cohesive sense of self and strong identity. Many anxiously and avoidantly attached individuals are more likely to rely on social comparisons as a means of reassurance and for finding answers to life's questions. Self-esteem is a psychological term that defines our general evaluation of our overall worth as an individual and is a natural byproduct of secure attachment. These evaluations are based on our judgments judgments about ourselves and the attitudes that we have about ourselves, our beliefs about our competency. And it encompasses emotions about ourselves, pride and triumph, or feelings of despair and shame. Sorry, I needed a drink. In childhood, parents have the most influence on shaping self-esteem. The more positive early experiences we have, the higher the chance we will develop a secure attachment and a healthy degree of self-confidence as children and adults. Avoidantly attached individuals are less likely to reveal their vulnerable selves. They have learned to suppress their feelings and downplay their emotional distress. They inflate their positive self-views. They do this by underreporting feelings of intense emotion, concealing what they consider to be negative aspects of themselves to promote a positive self image, and rarely post personal information. Everyone feels worse, regardless of attachment style, when they passively consume social media. Upward comparisons are made when we compare ourselves with people we believe are better than or superior to us. Upward comparisons can hurt our self confidence by triggering deep seated feelings of resentment, envy, and shame. Upward comparisons can contribute to our exacerbate or exacerbate depression and anxiety, and can even sabotage our relationships. Downward comparisons happen when we make comparisons with others we believe to be inferior or less than us. Downward comparisons can boost self image and enhance self esteem because they produce feelings of superiority over another person. However, downward comparisons are made at the cost of another's misfortune or by diminishing or devaluing an individual or group. It is not hard to imagine how using downward comparisons as a means of coping with low self esteem could damage relationships and inhibit emotional growth. On social media, people tend to showcase the very best versions of themselves and share only the highlights of their lives. The idyllic representation of others can naturally give the feeling that something is wrong with their own lives, triggering emotions such as fear of missing out, FOMO, shame, and self doubt. And of course, this is a picture of Heidi, not Heidi, well, it's an alpine picture of idyllic Switzerland or something. FOMO, idealization, attributing overly positive qualities to another person or thing, and devaluation, exaggerating the negative attributes of an object or another person by seeing them as completely flawed and worthless, are forms of cognitive distortion. Cognitive distortions are thoughts that reinforce negative emotions. When people tell themselves things that sound rational and accurate, but only serve to keep them feeling bad about themselves. It's all or nothing. Since the ubiquitous use of social media, the rise in numbers of those who have died by suicide between the ages of 10 and 24 years has jumped 56% from 2007 to 2017. There's an increase in the part social media plays in the manifestation of four mental health issues: depression, anxiety, body image disorders, and substance abuse disorders. That's supposed to be an H. It's gone up 56% in 10 years. An individual can lessen the impact of social media by educating themselves about the importance of developing social media literacy. Social media literacy is the ability to process the knowledge and beliefs gathered from consuming social media through the lens of critical thinking. Critical thinking is important because it allows us to realistically evaluate the information that is read, seen, and taken in from social media use. Social media literacy gives people the skills to apply multidimensional thinking to a one-dimensional social media world. Emotional health refers to our overall well-being. This includes your self-esteem, degree of meaningful relationships, regulating and letting go of negative emotions, our level of grit and resilience. People who are emotionally healthy feel in control of their emotions and behaviors, have positive and strong relationships, and recover from setbacks. At the forefront of social media literacy is the concept of critical thinking skills. Cultivating critical thinking in the digital era is especially important for children, adolescents, and young adults, considering the amount of content they consume on minute-by-minute basis. on a minute-by-minute basis. Skillfully being able to evaluate any type of digital media, including social media, means having the ability to determine what information is pertinent and what content can be excluded, and being able to accurately interpret the overall message and purpose of a text, picture, or post. These skills make us less vulnerable to being seduced into falling for misrepresentations and fabrications of reality. I was looking at, well, I told you that I looked at Facebook a little bit more than I should have. And one of the things that I kept seeing was archaeology, this archaeology that was just complete nonsense. I mean, it wasn't real. They were just making stuff up. And I kept thinking, why in the world would they do this? They showed a giant from Eastern China or something, and they showed this giant skeleton, and it was all together. I mean, it was like it was like a Halloween a Halloween skeleton. Well, skeletons don't do that. They don't. The bones don't stay together. They're connected with tissue. And the tissue, of course, dissolves when they die. The only thing that's left are their bones. So the bones, if you dig somebody up, then what you dig up are their individual bones. They don't come out as full skeletons. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Anyway, there were a lot of stupid things on Facebook, and I was just amazed. And it wasn't like the people were putting this up; it was Facebook trying to draw me in. It was them putting things on there that would make me keep scrolling. It was just the oddest thing in the world. Wow. Being aware of our emotions while we're logged on to social media is another important aspect of media literacy. Social media literacy entails the awareness of social media's impact on someone individually and on our society. It is also an information hub, shaping, reinforcing our attitudes, behaviors, preoccupations, and ideas. As far as social media's potential destructive consequences for a person's recovery, it is not hard to see how scrolling through Facebook and Instagram, seeing photos of friends drinking and out having fun, can trigger unwanted cravings by stirring up a fear of missing out from being sober. Virtual triggers are alarmingly similar to real life triggers. Being in a social setting where there's alcohol, such as at a bar, a party, or any event where alcohol is served, or running into drinking buddies can trigger the faulty wiring in the brain that links drinking to pleasurable experiences and makes us only remember the good times we had when we were drinking and using other substances. Seeing pictures that conjure up these memories on social media has the exact same effect. Social media's powerful emotional impact should not be underestimated as a real potential trigger for those in recovery. And when I was up north working on the Fort Belknap reservation, I had lots of friends who were recovered substance abusers or alcohol abusers. And that's what they talked about. All they talked about was what fun they had when they were, 23 years old and drinking and acting goofy, and that's the fun time of their lives. It was just a little strange to me that they were hearkening back to when they were drunk and couldn't remember anything. Nothing about living with depression and anxiety is easy. Multiple factors, many which are beyond our control, like genetics, hormones, and early environmental factors, contribute to their manifestation. Social media has also been shown to trigger depression and anxiety, as well as make their symptoms worse. But one very important variable we do have control over is our thoughts, our cognitions. Most of life happens between our ears, meaning how we perceive and feel about our experiences, whether they're stressful, traumatic, sad, exciting, or joyful, comes from our inner thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. But before we're able to attach feelings like joy, excitement, frustration, and anger to any given experience, we must first understand it by giving the experience a label or context. When our brain is in sync with reality, we correctly interpret our experiences, events, and social interactions and can count on their emotions being accurate and healthy. But many people's brains regularly misread reality. Consequently, their inaccurate thoughts create what psychologists call cognitive distortions, causing a great deal of inner turmoil. When cognitive distortions spiral out of control, they exacerbate conditions like compare and despair, social comparison, envy, depression, and anxiety. Sorry for the dog. Polarized thinking, black and white thinking. A person with polarized thinking categorizes people and situations as either or, all, none, and bad, good. Cognitive distortions of this kind lead to emotional distress because this kind of thinking doesn't take into account the complexity of most people and most situations. This type of thinking is often what lurks underneath feelings of FOMO, envy, or low self esteem triggered from social media use. Jumping to conclusions. At the heart of the jumping to conclusions cognitive distortion is the belief that we know exactly what another person is feeling and thinking and exactly why they act the way that they do. It's akin to being a mind reader like this guy. It's not hard to imagine how communicating via text, email, and social media messaging makes this kind of cognitive distortion more likely to manifest because of the missing body language and vocal tone. Should statements. People often use should statements to motivate themselves, but the general result is the opposite effect. Should, ought, and must statements can cause us to feel angry, pressured, resentful, and depressed. Eating disorders affect millions of Americans. It is estimated that approximately 30 million Americans will suffer from an eating disorder at some point in their lifetime. Eating disorders are the third most common chronic illness among adolescent girls, but it also affects boys, men, and women of all ages. Anorexia nervosa is characterized by weight loss, often due to excessive dieting, and exercise, sometimes to the point of starvation. People with anorexia feel they can never be thin enough and continue to see themselves as fat despite extreme weight loss. And this is what she looked like. This is what she looks like now. This is what she looked like when she was suffering from anorexia. You can see her bones. That's spooky. Bulimia nervosa is marked by cycles of extreme overeating known as binging, followed by purging or other behaviors to compensate for overeating. It is also associated with feelings of loss of control about eating. Binge eating disorder is characterized by regular episodes of extreme overeating and feeling of loss of control about eating. I try not to obsess about my appearance too much, and I know that being on social media can make my obsessions worse. When I'm on social media, I'm just constantly comparing myself to my friends and the social influencers I follow on Instagram or watch on YouTube. I end up saying things like, I should exercise more. I should do the exercises she's doing, or I must only eat raw foods, and then I will look more like the girls I compare myself to. And of course, they're probably photoshopped anyway. At the heart of the technique and practice of radical acceptance is the ability to accept a difficult reality rather than fight against it. Research shows that we cause ourselves more emotional pain and suffering when we rail against situations and people that are beyond our control. Radical acceptance does not support the notion that a difficult reality or relationship is okay and that one should just give up or give in to situations or relationships that are hurtful and destructive. The most meaningful lesson of radical acceptance is learning that life can be worth living even if in its painful moments. Accepting the things in our lives we can't change that we can't change ultimately leads to more gratitude, peace, and contentment. Studies show that greater overall social media use and high emotional investment in social media as a means for connection and validation were associated with insomnia and higher levels of anxiety, depression, and lower self-esteem. The direction of this relationship is still being debated, and the exact impact social media has on those struggling with a mental health issue remains unclear. Those higher in neuroticism may prefer to use social media as a means for meeting their needs for connection over connecting in person. And anxious and depressed individuals may use social media as a means for regulating emotions in much the same way a depressed or anxious individual might use alcohol, watching Netflix, or playing video games. A person experiencing normal mourning maintains their self-esteem in the hope that things will get better during the mourning process. A person coping with complicated mourning is consumed by feelings of despair and hopelessness. Complicated mourning can manifest itself physically through insomnia, weight changes, panic attacks, and substance abuse. It can prevent sufferers from attending school or work or from fulfilling daily responsibilities. Complicated mourning is all-consuming. Turning to social media in the midst of mourning, particularly when mourning the end of a relationship, only increases the chance that it will progress to complicated mourning. Instead of social media usage, the mourning individual should use self-soothing methods. Self-soothing methods are behaviors that are meant to relax and calm one's senses. Mediation, reading, listening to music, watching television, taking a warm bath, exercising, calling a friend to talk. The goal of self-soothing is to channel negative, sad, or otherwise uncomfortable feelings into either neutral or positive ones to focus attention on something else. And obviously, this guy is listening to music and exercising. When we mourn the loss of a relationship, much of the work that must be done to achieve acceptance actually requires that we forget. This doesn't mean literally forgetting an ex-partner and wiping all traces of them from your memory, but through a process known as detachment. Moving on requires us to emotionally detach from that person in order to make room for new relationships and attachments. Healthy detachment from a past relationship lays the groundwork for letting go, moving on, and loving again. This process can only happen after consciously relinquishing and working through the feelings, both positive and loving, as well as negative and angry, that are harbored toward the person that we are no longer in a relationship with. This type of emotional honesty can be challenging, but it is a major component of healthy grieving. Without emotional detachment, there can be no acceptance of loss. Talking about your feelings helps. Talking is healing. Constant checking social media isn't the only thing that can inhibit the mourning process. Studies show that consuming social media passively, ingesting content by scrolling through news, public posts, broadcasts, and public profiles without interacting with them is linked to negative well-being. Passive consumption of social media increases feelings of depression and loneliness. It can also exacerbate feelings of envy and fear of missing out, all of which can damage self-esteem. Feeling more sad and anxious when mourning a loss is the last thing to which we should be voluntarily subjecting ourselves. Self-sabotaging behaviors are made up of a complex set of actions and thoughts that ruin our good intentions and negatively affect our relationships, employment, health, quality of life, and emotional well-being. These self-sabotaging behaviors are usually learned in childhood through example and by modeling, and it is not uncommon for these behaviors to be passed down from one generation to the next. Agreeing to commitments and tasks that you'd like to say no to. These are self-sabotaging ways that people do things. Agreeing to commitments and tasks that you'd like to say no to. Procrastinating. Neglecting your physical health, for example, poor diet, lack of exercise, abusing alcohol. Frequently lying to people in order to avoid conflict. Being impulsive with actions and feelings, believing and needing to always be right, not finishing projects or tasks you started, focusing only on the negative aspects of your life or yourself, or sawing the limb off, sitting on the end of the limb that you're going to saw off. Have you regularly found that you can't find anything else but the moment that you will be able to use social media again? This is a part of the social media disorder scale. Have you regularly found that you can't think of anything else but the moment that you will be able to use social media again? Have you regularly felt dissatisfied because you wanted to spend more time on social media? Have you often felt bad when you could not use social media? Have you tried to spend less time on social media but failed? Have you regularly neglected other activities such as hobbies and sports because you wanted to use social media? Have you regularly had arguments with others because of your social media use? Have you regularly lied to your parents or friends about the amount of time that you spend on social media? Have you often used social media to escape from negative feelings? Have you had serious conflict with your parents, brothers, sisters because of your social media use? Bored people feel sluggish, uninspired, weary, or apathetic. Boredom is emotionally painful. More times than not, chronic boredom isn't just a benign and normal state of being, but rather it's a symptom of a much deeper issue like unresolved anger and rage, powerlessness, depression, grief, anxiety, or feelings around lacking purpose and meaning in one's life. And anything we do to suppress, deny, avoid, or minimize negative emotions is considered a self-medicating behavior. A serious consequence of self-medicating behaviors is their tendency to cause us more problems than the original problem we were self-medicating in the first place. Being stuck in an inner feeling of stagnation and paralysis that can feel beyond one's control. When feeling stuck, that's feeling stuck. When feeling stuck, whether because of lack of grief, after a significant loss, or feeling stuck in a relationship, it's normal for an individual to begin to question their core purpose and their life's path, and even their ability to make decisions. Being stuck causes us to feel hopeless and uninspired, and it's not a surprise to learn that feeling stuck can feel like boredom, leading to self-medicating behaviors. Common causes that lead to feeling stuck: underlying depression, self-doubt, fear of making mistakes, feeling powerless and hopeless, ambivalence, discomfort with trying new things and getting out of your comfort zone, no longer feeling curious to try new things. These are feelings of being stuck. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the ability to identify and manage your own emotions as well as the emotions of others in an effective and positive way. People with high EQs are good communicators, modulate their emotions, are able to empathize with others, diffuse conflicts, and are more acceptable to life's challenges. Emotional intelligence is comprised of the following skills. Self-awareness. This is the ability to label, recognize, and understand one's own emotions. Self-awareness requires the individual to tune in to their feelings and not avoid their negative emotions, such as anxiety, fear, and sadness. Emotional intelligence is emotional regulation. This is to do with the ability to control strong emotions by not acting on raw feelings in an impulse or destructive manner. The ability to sit with unpleasant feelings to give the individual the time and space to decide how they may alleviate or reduce negative feelings cultivates self-confidence. Emotional regulation also helps the individual develop the ability to consider various solutions to a particular situation or problem. Empathy. When the individual empathizes with others, they develop deeper, more intimate relationships. Empathy is the ability to recognize how and why people feel the way that they do. Empathy allows them to anticipate how their actions and behaviors influence other people as well as themselves. Developing empathy enhances the experiences and relationships as well as a general understanding of the individual, other people, and the world around them. Social skills, very broadly, having strong social skills means having the ability to communicate in a clear, concise, and courteous manner. In a nutshell, good social skills are the summation of all the components of EQ: self awareness, emotional regulation, and empathy. Mentalization is a psychological concept that refers to one's capacity to perceive and interpret one's own and others' feelings, beliefs, needs, thoughts, and motivations that underlie overt behaviors. Mentalization also has many of the same goals for cultivating and improving emotional IQ. Mentalization is thought to be largely unconscious and intuitive, requiring the individual to imagine the mental thoughts of another person and the unconscious motives behind their individual behavior. Psychologists break self-compassion down into three components: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness is defined as the ongoing, never-ending quest to understand in a kind, open, and curious way, rather than having an attitude of harsh judgment, self-criticism, and defensiveness. Personal flaws and inadequacies are treated in a gentle, understanding manner when one adopts an attitude of self-kindness, and the emotional tone of the language used toward oneself is loving, tender, kind, and supportive, making an individual more accepting of their imperfections. Cognitive behavioral therapy seeks to help clients put inner critical voices in perspective by challenging critical internal dialogues with self-compassionate self-talk. Techniques such as reframing, rethinking our negative thoughts by challenging them, soften the inner critic by replacing negative thoughts with ones that offer a healthy perspective and balance. Compassion-focused therapy is an integrative therapeutic approach developed for people who specifically struggle with chronic and complex mental health problems stemming from self-shame and self-criticism, often people who come from neglectful or abusive backgrounds. Most psychologists say that a healthy dose of shame, when rightfully felt, is beneficial to one's well-being in relationships. It keeps the individual on track for behaving in socially appropriate ways, so they maintain their relationship and repair them when necessary. Guilt reflects emotions related to doing something wrong or bad, whereas shame reflects feelings fundamentally bad about yourself regardless of the situation or circumstance. Those struggling with deep-seated unhealthy feelings of shame tend to withdraw and hide from the world, only to be left feeling even lonelier and rejected. The second healing component of self-compassion is common humanity. When practicing self-compassion, feelings of common humanity and belongingness automatically occur within an individual. They reduce feelings of separation and isolation and depression, and a host of other emotional disorders when they learn to see interpersonal and intrapersonal experiences as part of a larger human experience rather than seeing bad things and bad experiences as only happening to them. Mindfulness refers to holding on to one's painful thoughts and emotions with balanced awareness. Sweeping one's bad feelings and thoughts under the rug rarely, if ever, makes them go away. Exercising self-compassion and compassion for all people online is just as important and can contribute to healing on a global scale. With the rise in hate speech and cyberbullying and the climbing numbers of teen suicides, it is imperative that as a society, nation, and world, we recognize the urgent call for cultivating online digital compassion. My social media profile looks like I have lots of friends, but in reality, I never actually talk to anyone IRL, in real life. People across all cultures, religions, racial groups, economic groups, and genders have an innate drive to form relationships that are enduring, positive, and meaningful. According to the belongingness hypothesis, our most satisfying relationships are made up of frequent, affectionate, and reciprocal interactions with the same people over a span of time, as opposed to interactions with numerous and interchangeable people. Relationships and experiences that offer us healthy contradictory experiences, including therapeutic ones, are called corrective emotional experiences. Corrective emotional experiences are thought to be the primary mechanisms for producing transformative and positive changes. Corrective emotional experiences are what happen when you experience something firsthand that challenges a previously held false, distorted belief. Relatedness refers to the social nature of human beings that drives us to form connections with others. The sense of belonging that is planted and grows within a child from a loving and reliable relationship with their parents lasts for a lifetime and sets the foundation upon which all the child's later growth and relationships will build. The parental relationships is the foundation from which we can extend outward into the larger world. The majority of shared experiences in securely attached and healthy families with parents, caregivers, and extended family are likely to have been positive and supportive, with caregivers and parents who were emotionally attuned, empathic, and available. Being raised in this type of an environment results in a healthy sense of agency, self-esteem, and belonging. Those raised in dysfunctional families have had more negative shared experiences with their families than positive ones, thus often resulting in lifelong struggles with feelings of belonging. Psychologists recognize the importance and influence of early childhood trauma on adult behavior. If not healed, early emotional childhood wounds will play out destructively on direction through and reaction to life. Codependency is a common symptom of dysfunctional families, originally referring to patterns of interactions associated in families with alcoholism and substance abuse disorders. It describes a set of behaviors and attitudes in which the codependent is wholly preoccupied with and feelings responsible for another person's well-being. The term has gradually broadened to include family dynamics that rely heavily on denial, shame-based rules, the avoidance of confrontation, and the inability to develop healthy resolutions to conflict. Common behaviors and signs associated with codependency: the need for excessive approval from other people, organizing thoughts and actions around others' perceived expectations and desires, an overly defined sense of responsibility for others' happiness and emotional well-being, the inability to express one's real thoughts and feelings for fear it will upset others, the dependence of one's identity and self-esteem on others' approval and assumed expectations. A core characteristic of codependency is an excessive reliance on other people for approval and sense of identity. It is not hard to imagine how a person with codependent behaviors and characteristics could develop an unhealthy relationship with social media. Codependency inhibits authentic feelings of belonging. This is due to the codependent's enduring struggle with identity, self-concept, and a deep longing to be liked and feel accepted, causing the codependent to take on the personalities of those that they are with. Having dependency needs is healthy and normal. In mature and healthy relationships, people are able to comfortably rely on one another for support, understanding, and help, while at the same time retaining a sense of independence and autonomy. This dynamic is reciprocated not just one-sided. Healthy dynamics between people foster independence, resourcefulness, and resiliency, while codependent dynamics stifle and limit growth. This is especially true for the codependent. So much of their thinking and behaviors are organized around another's perceived expectations and desires. Evidence shows that just having a phone in the same room as us raises our stress and cortisol levels. Extended periods of high cortisol levels increase our risk for diabetes, depression, insomnia, high blood pressure, cardiac disease, and obesity, among other health issues. There's now a recognized medical condition, text neck, which refers to stress, injury, and pain in the neck caused by looking down too often and too long at our cell phones, tablets, or other devices. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. It's not the number of friends we have that makes us happier, it's the quality of our relationships. Research links having warm and secure relationships in childhood to better outcomes in our health and emotional well-being in our later years. There's a link between the presence of meaningful relationships and heart health, all good reasons for prioritizing our in-person relationships. Phubbing is the act of looking at your cell phone while in a physical presence of another. Phubbing is an example of how technology diminishes our social interactions rather than enhances them. Research shows that those that frequently look at their cell phone when in the presence of another person struggled with FOMO, had low levels of self-control, and overused technology. And there you go. Michelle's taken away Barack's telephone. Way to go, Michelle. Phubbing is common with someone who grew up in a dysfunctional family and never learned how to have close and trusting relationships. They may push people away or do and say hurtful things to prevent closeness. They may use technology and social media as a stand-in for intimacy and in place of intimate relationships. Many studies link internet and social network use to procrastination, lower academic achievement, and poorer concentration. One such study found that those with low self-control, habitual Facebook checking, and high enjoyment of Facebook are the very ones most likely to use Facebook as a form of procrastination, and that's what I was doing this spring break. Designating tech-free spaces in our environment or home is important for implementing boundaries around technology. It is especially important having bedrooms tech-free. Studies show a correlation between sleep issues, such as insomnia, with screen time. The blue light from cell phones, laptops, and other devices disrupts our circadian rhythm, leading to issues with sleep-wake cycles and poor sleep hygiene, which can lead to a host of health problems. Making a tech-free space leads to lower levels of anxiety and depression and noticeable improvements in focus, concentration, memory, and relationships. Frustration tolerance, our ability to withstand the discomfort of frustration, is a necessary skill that helps find balance. Learning how to move from the knowing zone into the doing zone is key to finding balance and making healthy decisions in the digital age. Most psychologists believe our sense of personal agency is what's responsible for allowing us to take action in our lives. Self-care is the intentional act of taking time to pay attention to ourselves. It lifts, energizes, and recharges the individual. When self-care is neglected, it makes the individual vulnerable to feeling stressed out, depressed, and anxious. They are also more likely to abuse substances, overuse technology, and have a lower sense of personal agency. And that is the end of Durlofsky. So, I'll talk to you again next week. I don't know what we're tackling next week.